Becky, look at his gut. He's got a big gut and I cannot lie. When I look at him, I want to die. Gut reaction. No. Yeah. We take it from the top. We try again. We take it from the top. We try again and again and again until we get to the correct timeline. I am one of those silly nerds who collects toys for children. But if I'm a man-child, doesn't that mean I'm also a child? Is this Steppenwolf impression making you like me more? No. Aloha nerds and welcome back to another episode of TheSalawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. And I know what you were wondering. TheSalawaggy, what did you think about Loki episode 4? And also, why didn't you talk about episodes 2 or 3? Good question. Welcome back to the show. Well, as you may have seen in the previous video, I loved episode 1. I really thought it was a fantastic piece of writing and filmmaking. Now, I'm not a real true comic book nerd, so you should not take anything that I say as relating to the comic books in any kind of way or what the creators of the comic books may have wanted. But just as a fan, as what I would be, I'd say, on the normal side of nerddom. I love collecting the toys. I love the cartoons. The cartoons were my religion. But I'm just, a regular guy. But as a regular guy, having loved the MCU for the last 10 years, I just love superheroes and cinema. It's just the live action spectacle is something I'm addicted to. I just gotta have it. And boy, does the MCU give it. We finally have the technology to have all this stuff. Hooray. True. Even if I'm still a normie for comic books, I'm still a nerd. I love this stuff. And boy, I think episode 4 of Loki totally it hits the level we should have been hitting from the beginning. Again, recapping what I've mentioned before, I did like WandaVision. I did like Falcon and the Winter Soldier for the most part. I think both shows had the weaknesses that the other show was strong in, and I feel like if they were one big show together, it would be a stronger piece. But Loki, on the other hand, what I think really has worked well for it so far is it's stayed focused on Loki and the people that surround him. It's Loki's own version of Thor, where he, having been banished from his own sense of reality, is entering a new reality and being forced to overcome his own arrogant self to be the hero that we all thought Loki would become. I don't think anyone ever expected this. But, so it's cool. It's cool being at episode 4, and Loki seems to be on the path toward being that hero that I was just talking about. But damn, does it start off dark. So without spoiling too much, I'll just kind of give you my gut reaction. Did I like it? Should you watch it? Up front. So if you haven't watched it yet and you're just like, hey, should I watch it, bro? Yes. If you liked 1 through 3, for sure, this is way better than the last 2 episodes. I think, 1 was great, really great pilot, set the tone, fantastic writing, performance, all that stuff. What I like about episode 4 is, we've kind of gotten out of the sort of extra goofy, like a little bit too much Loki. Like, we're starting off with the end of episode 3, Loki and Lady Loki / Sylvie are trapped on planet Lamentis, and the planet's going to just be destroyed, demolished by, or is it a moon where the planet is demolishing the moon? I was a little confused about whether it was a planet or a moon, or a planet being hit by a planet. Frankly, I did not pay that much attention. I just had a good time. But anyway, they're doomed. They broke their little time travel device. They're stuck there, and literally the last episode ends on the cliffhanger of, oh crap, we're stuck on this planet and we can't get off. Which, you know, the whole time I was wondering, is this going to be a dream fantasy? Is this going to be a trick? I think it would have been cool as a trick, but episode 4 chooses to go with a route that it wasn't a trick, and we're seeing the story unfold. You know, it's crazy to think about this show, how much fun this episode was. I really thought this was a great cinematic, you know, great performances. Really strong episode. I think, you know, it was just missing one scene, and I'll get to that later. I think it was really just missing one scene to elevate it to like true perfect greatness. But on the whole, it was cool seeing how they make it out. So you know, you're wondering, you know, shit, was this a fantasy? Is this reality? So getting into episode 4, it's like, oh crap, we're on the planet. They're about to be demolished. And Loki and Sylvie have this moment of tenderness, and then they're apprehended by the TVA. And from that point on, we're seeing this tale of sort of two prisoners, but really it's all sort of seen by Agent Mobius's point of view. And Agent Mobius is so, you know, he's in hot water because he brought Loki onto the case in the first place, and now he's escaped, and all this stuff has happened. And Mobius is trying to get the answers, the straight answers out of Loki about what happened in the previous episode, which was just all Loki and Sylvie running around on planet Lamentis. We didn't see the time variance authority at all. So this is kind of the other side of that episode that loops back into the ending of the episode. So it's cool. It's like I like when shows do that, when you play with your time and I like, you know, you focus on a single character and just tell that story. Tell it as thoroughly as you want to tell it. It's a TV show, you can drag your feet a little bit. And I felt like episodes 2 and 3 felt a little feet draggy, but not bad. Well written enough, well directed enough, but not bad. But it was all set up. So now we get into all this build up to sort of Loki and Sylvie being caught. And now they're caught. And essentially mission's over. And it builds to seeing the timekeepers. And that scene is awesome. I don't want to spoil that scene. I think that scene's really, really, it's not what you expect, but it's also just kind of a fun. I know true comic book fans are just pulling out their hair going, that's not the story, and you're right. We should have a comic book accurate cinematic universe, but I think we will get that at some point. But this, you know what, I've enjoyed the movies, and I like the way that they go. I don't want to get into it too much, because once you get there, and it's fun. You frickin' see the timekeepers. And I think it's worth it. I think it's a little bit funny, it's kind of cool, but it's also so exactly in the MCU. This is the first episode, this and episode 1, but certainly more this episode. This is the first episode of all of Disney Plus so far that has genuinely felt like we were in the MCU, like this was a feature film I'm watching in theaters. Except if it just had one scene that I really feel should be there. But on the whole, like, it's a little bit more of a talky episode. But it is the investigations kind of aspect of it, because this is mostly Mobius's episode. But it really just, it's this close to being, yeah, like the so well made. I do regret that they stopped. One of the things I realized what I didn't like about episodes 2 and 3, that even though 4 does not do it either, I forgive it because of what I'll say next. 2 and 3 felt very setupy, but they also stopped playing with time. They stopped doing time jokes. And I'm not saying that you need to do jokes to make baby happy. Make the Salawag baby happy. Happy baby. The happy baby. No. Yes, please meme that. But don't put your own words in there. Just what I said is fine. Please. Don't put what you want to put there. Just quote stupid Salawag. Anyway. Oh, so what I did not like about 2 and 3, which what I'm glad they finally did again for 4, so we kind of left the time travel gags and jokes a bit. 2 was very straightforward, almost too straightforward to the point where I a little bit bored. But I understood that it was about building the relationship between Mobius and Loki. A bit too straightforward. I'm not even gonna say on the nose necessarily. I would have started to at the point where Loki was just looking through the files. Because why would you bring this guy on a mission right away? I think even in storytelling terms, it's a little too fast. Have him looking through the files and then have him go on a mission, and it's just they make Loki a little bit too apparent. I just feel like he's a little smarter than how he's being written, especially in 2 and 3. 3 is really fun. It's a fun one, and it's cool to get the reveal and all that stuff about Sylvie. But man, I think 4 really rests in a good place because of all that build up and setup. 4 shows the proof in the pudding of how you can do sort of a building narrative, but still kind of have interest. Each episode has its own interesting sort of subject and situation going on. So I like that. Between 2 and 4, there's kind of this Mobius relationship. 2 is all about building Loki and Mobius's relationship, and 4 is like the consequences of Loki having gotten out of there and how pissed off Mobius is, and the kind of detective angry at his sort of undercover agent for doing criminal stuff. You know what I mean? So it was kind of cool to have episode 4 be about those kind of consequences, and sort of also Mobius trying to dig through the liar that is Loki and all that. But oddly at this point, so without spoiling too much, Loki kind of really just becomes very honest in this episode. It's very interesting. Again, I don't know how true to the comics any of this material is. At this point, I think we're just making pretty good television. There's still always that feeling that even though Loki seems to be earnest and honest and seems to be breaking down into a hero, which this episode's totally doing. This whole episode is Loki trying to convince Mobius that he is good and that he has some value as a good person. And that's kind of the driving part. It's another talkie, but the talkie now, because Loki has gotten some info from episode 3, about that in episode 3, that one agent had memories of her previous life, and it's revealed that these guys were variants. Again, I'm still quite suspicious of all of this. Everything seems just a little bit suspicious. So, it's really nuts. It is nuts that all this stuff pays off. The Lokis are caught. And we see the timekeepers. And we see them. I'm not saying how or what happens, but we see them. But anyway, all the build-up of all these previous 2 episodes actually comes head to head here, and confrontations are had, and there's consequences. There's consequences. Like both a good TV show and a comic, I think, you know, you have beautiful visuals, but you also have all this sort of false setup. You know, what The Last Jedi gets shit for, the Marvel Cinematic Universe fucking spews, and we eat it up like popcorn because they spew popcorn. And this is that kind of like, it's talky, but you're into it because, damn, ooh, he's talking about this, and they're mad about each other. Ooh, okay, but where's that gonna go? Ooh, we meet the timekeepers. Ooh, oh, what's gonna happen? Action scene for sure. It's just cool to kind of get there, and when they make the reveals, and when there's the consequences, it's intense. It's a little bit sad. I was really shocked at a certain part of the episode, and then I was really shocked at what happens at the end of the episode. And then stick around for the end credit scene. There's an end credit scene. This totally feels like a mid-season, stepping off point. The end credit scene is so awesome. Sit through the credits. Just gut reacting here. What a great time. Everything that built up across the last 3 episodes has happened. It doesn't feel like it's happening too fast. I do think certain things could have happened a little bit better overall between the last 2 episodes, but I feel like 4, because it is the conclusion of those build-ups, they don't feel rushed to me, except one part that I'll talk about later. But I do feel like on the whole, what a solid episode. Really great performances. I'm telling you, like, it's good television stuff. This is like a really, really fun Breaking Bad. It's like Thor Ragnarok Breaking Bad style, but from the point of view of the agents, not the bad. Except if Heisenberg was an agent. Fucking, I don't know. Okay, that's what this episode feels like. You know, it's still the MCU, but that's what's wonderful. It feels like really great television, but also meets the MCU cinematic standard. And I'm talking about when you meet the timekeepers, that environment, how the timekeepers look. Not how they sound. They sound quite terrible, but how they look, it both feels cinematically great. They look like the drawings a little bit, and they're creepy for sure, but also they're just cool to look at. Like, the design work's fantastic. Shit, I should have looked up I'm putting the production designer's name here. Fantastic work. Yeah, so anyway, that's my gut reaction. Really great episode, great time, great performances. For my standards, this is what I think is good. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. You know, bad Salawag. You lied. Well, I didn't lie. I told the truth. It didn't work for you. What can you do? I can't help that I showed up on your autoplay while you were asleep, okay? And then you decided to watch when you woke up. I can't help that. That just happened, bro. I'm sorry. So anyway, so that was my basically spoiler-free, yes, gut reaction. It's called Why It's Great Gut Reaction. I just talk about things I like. Yeah. Go watch that. Check that out. And next, we're going to enter nerd mode, where I will spoil the shit out of this episode and just talk about shit I liked. So, thank you for watching this segment. Prepare to get bored.
Who's that? Who's coming?
So here we are in nerd mode. Nerd Mode is in spoiler territory. You must be here for spoilers. Not good ones. I'm just like reacting more. I'm just reacting more, and I'm going to nerd out about some of the cast and crew behind this shit. First of all, Nerd Mode, I'm giving some hats off to some crew members behind this stuff. I really thought, really well directed episode. Director Kate Herron directed an episode of Daybreak and an episode of Sex Education. I watched one episode of Daybreak. It was not for me. It was well made, but not for me. Sex Education I have not watched, but I think it was popular. It seemed to pop up on Instagram a lot, or maybe that was just the algorithm feeding me. But I thought, right up front with the beginning of this episode, we see Loki and Sylvie sitting with this fantastic horizon view of this planet, and I think right there, episode 3, although it was well done, did not feel quite cinematic in the way I feel MCU should look. And to me, still has that kind of TV vibe. Which, no offense to any of the filmmakers, because it still looks fantastic. But I think as I'm watching it, I'm like, I don't. Something is not there or there that I don't quite feel really has the look. Like episode 1 has the look, and episode 4 has that look. Well, I like that perfect cinematography, photographic sense is what I like. And I know that's really pretentious, and that's really very specific. But that's what I want to see. I just feel like, if you guys promise this. I didn't mind the TV show look of the Netflix shows, personally. I was like, it's a TV show. Daredevil looked cinematic enough. It didn't look like MCU cinematic, but it looked good. It looked really good. I'm rewatching season 1 right now. Man, actually, I have an even higher opinion of how well shot that was. But it looks more like an indie film as opposed to a Marvel film. It's definitely Marvel stuff, but it's much in the way of the previous, what I call the first wave of Marvel, which was, everything from the late 90s Blade to whatever they were making after Iron Man but before the Avengers. So that solid decade of superhero films I call Wave 1, where each one may have had really great strengths, but didn't necessarily feel like a Marvel picture. Like the first Blade, fantastic movie. I don't know if it's necessarily in the Marvel tone, but they were also, the people that made it, David Goyer, read that comic book, so he himself had a different view of how Blade should be presented in the modern time, because that comic came out in the 70s with a very particular style. But each of those movies had a different quality. Blade was very different from Spider-Man, which was very different from The Punisher with Thomas Jane. And the Netflix shows kind of had that vibe where they all kind of felt like an indie movie at highest when it comes to the cinematic quality. It doesn't look or feel like MCU, but each one was great in its own way. But we don't honestly think that way about all the shows. But each one was great in its own way, but it didn't really have that MCU cinematic standard, because the MCU, even though little rocky in the first 2 volumes, it did try to develop a distinct look, and definitely post the Avengers found its look and found its tone and what audience it was trying to attract. That first Iron Man, I think, split the difference between genuine MCU and that kind of Spider-Man sense. It was a bit darker of a story where more stuff happened, but still quite family friendly. And after Avengers, they just went hardcore family friendly. That was the kind of the tone they wanted to go for, and that's also half of why all these changes are made to these characters, because now they're not just appealing to a general audience, but specifically the family audience. And it's under the Disney umbrella, that's what it's going to be like. So I forgive it. But what I appreciate, fucking tangent. But what I appreciate about, again, episode 1 and now episode 4, again, when we see those timekeepers, man, or when we see that first shot of Sylvie and Loki on that horizon, that vista shot, but it genuinely looks beautiful. Man, I really felt something there. And the connection between Loki and Sylvie, which was built up in the previous episode, that connection feels earnest, and it feels, even if maybe a little bit quick, it does feel kind of earned, because time is taken for them to look at each other and have what seems to be like a romantic but also a genuine friendship quality. And then it's also, I mean, I can't help but feel as I'm watching this opening, like, damn, it's sad that Loki's only friend is himself. But it's also beautiful that it is actually another person. But it is himself. It's another person, it is a female, but it's your own genetic makeup, technically. Just with the female chromosome. But it is a different person because she has different powers. She has different strengths. Clearly a much better fighter. Like, sort of not on the scale of Hela, but definitely more going that way than where Loki's at. But, that's also a joke in the show. It's brought up in the very next scene. Everything you think about in each scene, what I like about this episode is everything you think about is actually what's the show responds to, as opposed to what I feel with 2 and 3. It's like what you're seeing is what you're responding to. But when you're watching Loki have a romantic moment with Lady Loki, and you can't help but think how freaking sad and messed up that actually is, and then the show addresses that. It addresses what you're thinking about, which is fantastic. But they've also set you up to think about that because of all the baggage that they dragged us through with the last 3 episodes. Because basically it's just been a baggage run. It's been an emotional gauntlet for Loki. Like, look at all the crimes you committed. Look at all the horrible sadness that you've created. You were meant to lose so that genuine great people could win, which is so messed up. You know what I mean? But at the same time, thank God you lost, because they saved a lot of people. But again, that's the whole point. It's like, Jesus, dude, like, you really have earned a lot of this punishment. So it's interesting that as a show, it's not trying to address the comic book, but it is trying to address the cinematic universe itself. That I really like. I think with WandaVision, you didn't have enough of Wanda or Vision to have anything to think about for what the show should be. And so the show could go anywhere it wanted. And with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you definitely had preconceptions, and I feel like the show really tried to, and for the most part did achieve, reenacting and embracing that Civil War tone and story. But in all honesty, I don't think that was the right way to go. I think, it's great that each movie was different, and the biggest mistake for that show was to try to resemble that movie. Except for the appearance of the Dora Milaje, which I 100% appreciate. I don't care that the reasoning is totally like, wow, okay. But, whatever. They came back and the choreography was pretty damn badass. But, yeah, with Loki, it was crazy that we're like talking about what happened. We're talking about the choices he made across the last 10 movies and forcing him to address it and deal with it. That, to me, I think is interesting. I was like, ooh, it's the reverse Batman. In Batman, you're seeing the construction of why a guy would do something that is basically a noble deed. A noble man on his noble steed. But now we're watching, here's the Joker here's the Joker having a midlife crisis and being forced to think about all the horrible things he's done and being given an actual choice. It's like, no, now you can choose. Now that you've already done all the bad, and you've never really tried good, now you can choose. And the real question of the show is Loki going to be good by the end of the show? See, I'm still not spoiling the end of this episode. I'm not spoiling it because I know you probably just keep watching it because you're just like, fuck it, I want to know what you think, but I won't watch to the end of the video where you spoil the ending. Watch the episode before I nerd out any further, okay? Watch the episode before I nerd out further. Because I'm going to tangent a lot. But amongst those tangents, there's going to be something of a thought here in the goddamn nerd mode in a frickin' spoiler territory. You know, spoiler territory is almost as bad as Backcountry, but Backcountry is still much worse. But anyway, yeah, the beautiful shots, the sense of time being given between the actors that where they seem like they have a genuine connection. It felt a little bit forced in the previous episode, both in the writing and maybe the directing. I'm not sure. Something was a little bit awkward in episode 3, even though it was a well-made episode on all fronts. I'm just not sure what was exactly I didn't feel about it, but I just didn't quite feel it. But right up front with the visuals, that visual storytelling is everything. The dramatic wide, beautiful vista shot, two people alone, and the amazing shot of the planet breaking apart and all of its chunks. That was amazing. That was a beautiful visual. So cinematic. I cannot get over how beautiful just the opening of this episode is. And I appreciate both from a writing and directing standpoint. We are staying with Loki and Lady Loki for the duration of the destruction of the planet. It's like, wow, this is so epic, so dramatic, very Watchmen. And like the cinematography, the effects, it really goes to a cinematic level. And so even though we do go back to the TV show set, that too is shot very well. But now, again, because of all the baggage unleashed by this Lady Loki's power, that when she invades your mind, she digs into your memories and actually unlocks them for you. You can see them. And that is, first of all, it does give you an easy cheat out to turn enemies into friends, which happens in this episode. But I actually just like it as a storytelling device. I just thought, oh, that's really cool. That's a cool way to sort of unveil more story and have these characters be more interesting. Like, oh, so they weren't created by these gods as something. They're just freaking variants who were given jobs. It's almost sweet, except that why were their memories wiped? You know, or was that a choice? We don't know. There's so much we don't know, but you know, I was like, oh shit, that's so cool to tackle that. And then that this episode takes it also head on. That Loki immediately tries to tell Mobius, shit, dude, like, you're a variant. You were pulled out of your timeline. You had a life. And seeing Owen Wilson deal with that, and also, you know, fantastic casting of Wonmi Mosaku. I hope I'm saying your name right. This lady is from Batman v Superman. She plays the poor village victim of Lex Luthor's evil plot to frame Superman for crimes that don't make sense. She was in Lovecraft Country. Very controversial show, I have to say. Like, you know, I get you, and also, wow, okay, bro. Black Mirror, which I don't know which episode she's in, but dang, I want to go back and watch that now. And she's in Luther. She's been in a lot of great stuff. She's the lead Minute Force person, who's basically the head of security. She plays a basic character, what some people would say a non-character, the head of security person who doesn't like the hero or the protagonist. but will either come around or be defeated, because there's only so many ways you could go with that type of character. But they go the other way, and they use Lady Loki's power on her in the previous episode. So in this episode, she's dealing with that, and I like that she goes to Lady Loki herself and takes us back to episode 2, or is it 3? Episode 2, where we go to the rocks shop, rocks store, or whatever Walmart like store it is that's clearly part of the Roxxon Corporation. I love that we go back there, and again, the way that's shot, which looks like a comic book panel, that wide shot of seeing Wunmi, or B-15, seeing her stand on one side and seeing Lady Loki on the other side, and just the lower section, the top part is just cut off, but we just see the logo in the background is just cut off, just so you know it's there, but it's not too much in your mind. Which was similar to how it was shot in episode 2, but even better now, because you know where they are and the hurricane is happening. And in that scene, Wunmi asking to see her past again, that was beautiful. That merges that sort of indie film with cinematic, because it looks like an epic cinematic scene in a movie. I feel like I'm watching something that should be on the big screen. That, from the trailers, is what I knew I might like this show, because it was very clear to me that WandaVision was a very beautiful artistic experiment, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier would attempt to be like Civil War, and they really use all the cinematic shots in the trailer. That show overall looks kind of like the Netflix shows. It kind of looks like not even Luke Cage. The quality of the shows, I would say, for Netflix is Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Defenders. No, actually, no. Daredevil. Yeah. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Punisher, Defenders, Iron Fist. And, I feel like Falcon and the Winter Soldier was anywhere in there. Anywhere in the Netflix sort of quality. It just didn't quite feel cinematic. It felt like a little indie student film at times. But damn, that just, to me, I'm like, this is what Kevin Feige promised. He said that these shows would live up to the movie quality. I do think WandaVision in the finale had some signature scenes that felt like the MCU. And certainly Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the action lived up for the most part. To the MCU. Definitely Falcon's first action scene, that was A+. It was a little bit ridiculous, it was too much, but it was also like, hey, you know what? You got me there. You got me there with that scene, and that's in the first episode, and I gotta give him credit for that. But damn, to have the whole episode feel this way, from every single scene having a cinematic moment, really great shot choices. I gotta applaud the direction there to really use strong shots, really strong framing, and the close-ups. I don't feel like we're shaking around a lot. I feel like the close-ups are really picked in a very deep emotional way, where we're seeing two characters connect with one another. Again, there's a feeling of patience between the actors, that they do it when it feels right, as opposed to it feeling a bit rushed, like they're trying, maybe just because they have too many scenes to film, because especially that last episode was a very action heavy episode. Like, just that feeling of time, and also because this is a more dramatic episode, we are taking that time to have that sense of drama. But I think in that end, really nailing it. I just love that shot. Again, we have the shots of two people together are dramatic shots in this episode. It's just part of the language of the episode. Because when we get to the mid-episode twist, mid-episode twist. Ooh, that hits. It really hits. Yeah, it's just cool from a visual sense. I just love this episode visually. And getting to hi, hi, I'm the joke. I'm the red letter media joke. The vistas, they're so beautiful. The vistas. I collect toys. The vistas. Now they do hit Loki with a lot of personal stuff, and there is definitely a mean conversation between Loki and Mobius. Because, Owen Wilson being Owen Wilson, cast in this role is for a reason. That he is sort of a genuine, well-meaning kind of guy, and Owen Wilson totally perfect for that role. And perfect for the type of guy who I'm a big fan. You buy him when he's talking to Loki, and you feel like, but you do feel more like he's kind of like a fan like us watching the show or watching the MCU. But I like that mean little conversation where he's basically at this point just belittling Loki, although he's been talking down to him the entire time because he's like, "Geez, you're such," which is. It is, again, the Avengers' attitude toward Loki back in the Avengers. Like, dude, you're a pretentious little jerk. Down in the real world, we have to do things. When Loki says that to him, I'm like, oh, God, look at you. And then, again, what you're thinking is what Owen Wilson says. It's like, oh, I'm going to have a prince tell me what the real world is like. Which, again, is part of why everyone feels that way. That kind of stuff was really cool and fun. I'm like, oh, you're getting into the juicy bits in this show. That's what I like. Like, thank you. That's, again, not to rag on the other two shows, but I think WandaVision got a bit lost in its own gag, in its own experiment. Even though it was all well made. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I also think got lost in its need to feel like Civil War. Man, this show committed to being about this sort of dual buddy cop scenario where we got Loki being buddy cop with Mobius, but also being undercover buddies with Sylvie. But everyone actually kind of likes each other, and they kind of don't feel like playing the same old plot over and over again. They themselves are tired of the same tropes, and it's like, okay, this is such a meta show, but again, good television. Is it true to the comics? I don't know. Good television, but damn, because we get all that intensity, it really means something when Mobius believes Loki, and he has to go become his own undercover person, and Ravonna. I'm not sure if I wrote this down right. I just IMDb'd right before doing this. She's so great. She was in Beauty and the Beast. She should have been the Beauty. Good Lord. I'm not worthy. Goo. I'm not worthy. I hope I'm saying your name right. Wow. You like her. The fact that, oh no, I forgot. This episode begins with the freaking origin of Lady Loki's scenario, where it was Ravonna who was the TVA agent to collect her and kind of let her go. So there's some interesting inner conflicts going on between all of these TVA agents, where Ravonna lets Lady Loki go, starting this entire scenario that led into the show. And Mobius also helping Loki out, trying to prevent him from being killed for the sake of the timeline, for the sake of the case. That there's a sort of sympathy that these guys have for these people being picked up, because they understand that their only crime was just making a slightly different choice. And that slight choice shifted reality. And now the question is, now in this show, is like, is it right to even have this TVA authority anyway? It's pretty messed up. You're just taking people out of the time and killing them when they veer. But does that kill them from the timeline? Now I'm really confused. Now I'm really wondering about this show and how this works. When you start thinking about it. But, well crafted show. But yeah, so when Owen Wilson, has the conversation with Ravonna after the Lokis are caught and everything, he attempts to get the evidence, and so he steals her little phone thing and watches the video of the wonderful Sasha Lane, who was in Hellboy. We don't talk about the Hellboy remake, but she was great in that movie. There was some cool stuff in that movie. I'm not a fan of it. She was in American Honey. I saw a little bit of that. Actually, never finished that, but she was pretty damn great in that, and she's great in Utopia. So I really like this actress. She's great in the stuff I've seen so far, and she was great in this little role. It's just a little tiny role. She just has had a couple scenes so far, and she's just great. She's good. So, Mobius sees the video of her basically spilling the beans on the whole situation. So he sees that evidence. But here what I don't like. After seeing the video with Sasha Lane, he's immediately convinced about what Loki said. And although, now here right away, the video by itself is too on the nose. It is just, like in Minority Report, it's an orgy of evidence. It's just too obvious. Like, every word she says is the words you were supposed to hear to put together the pieces, But it's played well. Like, it's performed perfectly. I just feel that, okay, here, what I'm going to introduce a podcast within a podcast, inspired by Kind of Funny, of whom I am not worthy. A podcast within a podcast of my own, called TheSalawag's Final Cut. What would the Salawag do if he could add something or change something to the episode, or show, or movie to make it better? So right here. So he watches this video, and it's fucking mega spoilers, okay? Spoilers, bro. He watches this video and just immediately believes Loki. And I just feel like, because it is just so obvious, handing you the exact words you need to hear to believe Loki's story, I just feel like he, and especially for how convinced he is of his own reality, I feel like he would still need something physical and personal as a piece of evidence to convince himself that what they're saying is true. That even this would not necessarily be enough. And I think so what I feel this episode needed right here, like the one scene I feel that if they put this scene in there and shot this scene, it would completely elevate everything that happens after this moment. I think he should have still questioned it for just one more scene and gone down to the records and looked for his own case file. He should have found his case file, and at the very least found like a wallet, maybe a bag of clothes, the bag of clothes that he was wearing, his old wallet, and the keys to his jet ski, and a picture of him and his family. And I think he should have found this file and essentially had the same moment that Loki had. It should have been his own moment, except his revelation is a reality-bending revelation. But also, that's what he's been trying to do to Loki this whole time, is to break Loki's sense of reality about himself, to break this lie, this illusion he's put over himself, to become a genuine person, whatever you may be, but stop this lying and nonsense. While B15, while Wunmi is, Wunmi, I hope I'm saying your name right, while she's getting her flashback again, which we don't need to see. She is that far of a side character. She's still a great actress. I know she's a great actress because I've seen Lovecraft Country, which is, I'm still not sure if I'm going to do a video on that. But she was great in it, and she's and her quality. But while she's having her off-camera flashback, because this is a Mobius episode, and we should have had him just remember being on the jet ski and his family for just a moment. And then see his face when he remembers, and see him like cry a little bit because he remembers. He smells the water, he feels it. He feels his, holding his kid's hand while walking to the boat or something like that. Yeah, and remembers holding that drink. That drink should have been it should have been more than just, I believe it is a clue, but it should have been more than just a clue to him being a variant. We should have seen him drinking that drink while walking around with his kids, and he's just, he's one of those guys who crushes energy drinks and goes and does exciting things. He's one of those dudes, but he has a family too. That, I think, would have been really elegant, and it would have been a great scene for his character. It really would have been great for Owen Wilson to play. I know he would have nailed something like that. Just inserting what would be 2 extra scenes to shoot, at least 1 whole day's work. If you shoot it right and fast enough. I think that right there really would have elevated the whole episode up to the notch the MCU, I believe, can reach. True drama. Because after that, we have him confronting Ravonna, and she's got the guys, and she's clearly aware that he stole her phone. Again, just too obvious. There's 2 things there that were too obvious and too quick right next to each other. His just blatant theft of her phone, which of course she would find out right away. And then, just the blunt evidence that says the exact words you need to say to believe the thing. I think at least if you padded that out with a genuine scene of human character emotion and flashback and his story being revealed to him, that with a genuine, emotional, crushing, heartfelt reaction, that would justify Owen Wilson's time being here, because he is a cinematic actor. Whether you like him or not, he is a really strong actor, and he's got the stuff, and I think he's really been given a great role here. That would have been perfect. But beyond that, I think once we see him, spoiler, dude, spoiler, watch the episode. Spoiler. When we see him get burned to a crisp, I'm like, no! That was soul crushing. But I do think it would have been stronger, and I think his confrontation with Ravonna would have just meant more. Because it just seems too hopeful. Because even he, as the actor, and he didn't have that dramatic scene, so he's just kind of hoping that he actually has these memories as opposed to actually having seen it. Now, hopefully that is like a deleted scene they do or something like that. But I feel like if it is deleted, put that back in. Because this episode is so strong. I don't think they even knew how strong of a job they did in this episode. Because I think that scene, if they shot those 2 scenes, him finding his keys and remembering having a family, that would have turned this into cinema. Genuine cinema. But it's still great without it. It still works without it. But again, just too blunt, too blatant. Just like, that's TV blatant right there. That's just that easy TV economy of dialogue, wiping something away for you. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like stuff like that. But this episode's so strong, and it's played perfectly and shot so well. Yeah. So anyway, that's the end of that podcast on the podcast, TheSalawag's Final Cut. Thank you for, allowing me to say that shit as if it would be worthwhile, but hopefully it is. But yeah, so barring that, from that point on, I think the episode's great again. And so the fucking timekeepers are robots? What the fuck? Charlie from Emergency Awesome did talk about there being seeds left in the show about Wizard of Oz. And I didn't recognize them personally, but geez, man, like, that, now Charlie set it up for me, so when it happened, I was like, oh, this is the Wizard of Oz thing. This is totally the ruse being revealed. Like, what the hell? But I'm also glad because it's also like how are beings this powerful, if they did exist, why would they truly just sit there where anybody could get to them? And if they don't exist, who's the bad guy running the show? Because that definitely seems to be what's going on. Somebody's running the show, and they're running a little time scheme of some kind. And supposedly, Kang the Conqueror is showing up in Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, played by dang, I forget his name. He's the lead in Lovecraft Country, but he'll be playing. The Troll Scroll will say your name, sir. But he's the lead in Lovecraft Country, and he's supposed to be playing Kang the Conqueror, who is a huge Marvel villain, apparently. But so now my question is, knowing that and what Charlie said on Emergency Awesome uh, about the Ravonna characters, that apparently she's romantically entangled with this guy, and I can't remember if he said that they. Now you can go watch his show and see what he actually said, but I can't remember if he said she's helped him out, but she's still a good guy or something like that. But there is a kind of romantic entanglement there, so I'm wondering if she's part of this whole thing. Is she also one of the victims? What's going on here exactly? But it was really great because, especially because I could not understand what the hell they were saying, but I did appreciate how cool they looked. And I love when, you know, Wunmi comes in, but she immediately gets knocked out. But she comes in and starts a little action scene, which is cool. But she helps Lady Loki and Loki have a great battle. It's a cool little fight scene. I don't think the action in this show lives up to what Falcon and the Winter Soldier did. But this scene, at least in terms of the cinematography, shoots the action very well. It looks really great. It looks like a movie. But yeah, watching Lady Loki cut off the head of that timekeeper and revealing the robot stuff was nuts. What a cool time with that. Because now it's just questions galore. This show is now starting to turn into Lost. It's like, oh, another question. Where could this lead to? You know what I mean? That's the whole thing with Lost. Every 5 minutes is a question about something. And I'm on an island in the middle of nowhere. But there's so many questions and things to find out. Oh my God. Oh, flashback. Oh, I'm an emotional scene. You know what I mean? Basically, that's what this show has become. It's just because at first it felt like other stuff, but now I realize this show is Lost, the short version, because you're just going from question to answer to question, but each answer is a question. And it was like, well, the twists don't stop coming on this show. So, damn, not only do we get Morbius's death, but then we get the destruction of the notion of the time creepers. Are they real? Are they these stupid robots? Is this just a ruse? Who's behind it? All the questions are there. But damn, you know, Loki has a moment of tenderness again. So the episode basically begins with Loki and Sylvie holding hands, ready to die at the end of the world. And the show ends with them meeting the Timekeepers, which they've been fighting for the last 4 episodes. And they learn they're robots, and then Loki, thinking that all of their enemies are done on the ground, grabs her, and he has a moment of I've never done this before. And it's like, what? And is he gonna kiss her? But you just feel the tenderness, especially again because of the little scene earlier with Mobius and Loki. You like her? No, I don't. No, you narcissistic fuck. It's so sad. That's such a messed up scene on so many levels. Like, you can only love yourself. That's so messed up. But also kind of beautiful, but also so. This show is, like, messed up on so many levels. I think, you know, it passes the like a comic book test. I think Justice League passed a like a comic book. Not adapted from a comic book specifically, but like a comic book in terms of how weird and the visual and how the writing is. Very much yeah, like a comic book. That is how I would say this show is, because now we have all these dramatic incidences, and freaking just at the moment of tenderness where he is going to be a little bit closer than just awkwardly holding someone, Loki gets stabbed with the melty, fryy stick and he burns up. It's like, no, God, what? And that's the last image of the show of Ravonna with alone with Sylvie again in a room, having taken someone that she cares about. Well, in the beginning, she took her out of her world where she had parents, and at the end, she takes away her would-be boyfriend, male version of herself. Look, we're accepting a lot of things in society right now, so you better accept someone being in love with themselves. You already fucking watch YouTube. You're basically there. Ooh, was that too much? I'm sorry, you chose to keep watching. I tell you not to watch this shit. But damn, the twist, because, again, there's that great bit where while Mobius is celebrating having caught both Loki's in a time prison cell where he relives a moment of Lady Sif angry at him for cutting off her hair, and calls him sick and sad and tells him he's always going to be alone. And, I don't know if they really utilized her time as well as they could have, but this, again, we're talking kind of blunt and kind of on the nose here. This episode is a lot of that, but I think the directing overcomes the on the nose aspect a lot, because it is just they play it the right way. I wonder if they did multiple takes with multiple versions, or if Kate Herron just knew the way to go. But everything felt justified, and it felt like everyone was coming from the right personal motivational standpoint. So it never felt too false, and I just felt like as blunt as it ever got was the evidence and the immediate decision to trust the evidence from Mobius. Everything around that, I think, is an acceptable version of bluntness. But when we have those lines of "you're always going to be alone," and he's the one that burns up, and it's Sylvie who was alone in the beginning, alone across time, and now she is the one who's alone. There's again, a double sadness about this. And Loki himself, not just at the moment of having someone and not being alone, being burned up. And so that is one of those sort of aspects of storytelling that sort of Stan Lee would have enjoyed. I think he said Russian novelists do it, where you have the double jeopardy or the double tragedy or the double sadness, because the when it rains it pours type of scenarios, where, in terms of a fun way to tell storytelling, one type of story is the story where someone wants something but doesn't get it. But do they get something they need? Or is it twice as bad if they do get it? And Rocky is one of those stories. He wants to be a champ, but he goes out into the ring at the end of that movie and he loses, spoiler alert, but he gets the girl. And his pride is that even though he lost the fight, he never got knocked out and he never stayed down. He always stayed on his feet. So he was just proud of himself for never getting knocked down, or at least not staying down. And which was kind of his attitude with Adrian, the girl that he's trying to get at the beginning of this movie. It seems like it's something that took him some effort, but she did like him back in some aspect, at least enough to actually try a date with him. And, so he has this victory. He fought for his dream. He lost the first battle, but he fought for his dream, and he stood on stage and went for it, and he got the girl. And but he lost. But in this case, this is the tragic version of that kind of story where just as you get what you want, you lose everything. So that's a kind of messed up kind of story right there. And what again a cliffhanger ending, very Lost like, because it just ends with, damn, Loki died. That's the end. And wow, what a way to leave. I couldn't change it. I couldn't go back on Disney Plus. I did want to know if there was going to be an end credit scene, because that is such a huge thing to kill your main character at the end of the 4th episode when you know it's supposed to be about him as the main character. And I really sat there thinking, shit, is Sylvie going to be the main character of the Loki show? She is technically a Loki. And we've seen most of the trailer shots, featuring Loki. So what the hell's going to happen next? And thankfully I didn't change anything yet, because then the frickin' end credit scene happened. Wow! Did you watch the end credit scene? I'm going to let you go back. Go watch it now. Pause this shitty ass show. Go watch it now. Watch something of quality, and then come back to my piece of crap, and you'll hear me talk to you about it. Because we're just at the nerd bar where nerdy thoughts fly around. Zippy zappy zoo. What the fuck? Loki wakes up in the afterlife? Is that what that is? He's in the death dimension, I guess. Damn, what another great twist, and also so comic booky. Even though, again, I don't know if any of this is actually based off of a specific comic, but comic books and anime and manga do this all the time, where you're never defeated by death. The show, especially when the show is your title, now you have to fight through the underworld. This is also very old school. You know what I mean? Like Persephone and Hades. That's ancient storytelling right there. Fighting for your life in the underworld itself. So now he wakes up in what can be presumed as the underworld, or Hades, or Limbo, the place where your soul goes when you die. And he wakes up, and what does he see? Other Lokis. And again, watching Charlie on Emergency Awesome was talking about the other Lokis who were cast. And I was like, oh snap, okay, well, how's that going to play? And actually, it kind of worked. I think sometimes I watch Charlie and he's just spoiled. I think that may have also ruined WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier a little bit, because Charlie was just so knowledgeable. He was so on the up and up. I remember I used to go to comicbook.com or something like that way back in, again, what I call Wave 1 of Marvel. And just to look for potential spoilers, and really no one knew anything back then. They, you just didn't have the resources and people full of knowledge everywhere, sort of giving you all the information and the facts. And here Charlie just does he does the entire comicbook.com connections. I remember the forums where people read the comics and like, oh, this might happen, and this image is what happened in this comic, and Charlie does it all in one. So I think I watched that a little too much, and so because of that, I think I just had too many potential spoilers. That not to knock the show. He tells you he's spoiling the show. It's a review show. It's about talking about the spoilers. That kind of show. It's a great show, Emergency Awesome. But damn, I think because I watched it too much, I think I spoiled the experience for myself a bit. So I couldn't appreciate the shows because I already felt I knew what was going to happen, and it was kind of just figuring out which version of the thing's going to happen, because Charlie presents all the possible outcomes. So I've watched that a little bit less, so I think that has helped me appreciate the show. But definitely, even Charlie didn't suggest that Loki would get wiped out, or that Mobius would get wiped out. I mean, that was just like... And now this opens the door. Is Mobius in this universe? I mean, holy crap, there's so many questions. It's so much fun. This is the Lost episode, This is I remember Lost was also like this. I loved the pilot, and episodes 2 and 3 I also thought were okay. Did not quite achieve the cinematic level of that first episode. But then episode 4 of Lost, centered on a different character who we didn't see quite as much of before. I mean, this show is really just Mobius and Loki for the most part, and now Sylvie. So it doesn't break that. But now, again, now we focused more on Mobius on this episode, his point of view on things. Like that 4th episode of Lost, it ends with this twist, this really fantastic twist. I'm not going to spoil the episode of Lost. Watch Lost and watch that 4th episode. And you're going to have, I think, if you weren't in, episode 4 is one of those ones where if you weren't 100% in on the show, now after 4 you're gonna be in. I definitely love this twist and the comic bookiness of now we died but we have to fight for life in the afterlife. Okay, like, okay, yeah, cool. Well, how else do you keep going? I mean, again, that's another dimension of reality. So now are we gonna see Lady Death? Are we gonna see that? What are we gonna see next? Are they going to hop the multiverse now that this Nexus event has occurred? So, yeah, I love all these questions, but also, again, I think just really fantastically well made. All the baggage that Loki's dragged through in this episode, and even the moment with Lady Sif, I really appreciated how, even though she's repeating herself, Loki does hit a point of where he's just honest and opens up and says, "Look, I'm a bit of a narcissist. I just thought it would be funny. I'm just afraid of being alone. And he's just bearing his soul to her, and she doesn't care, and punches him in the gut, and and kicks him over, and tells him he's always going to be alone. And you just see the look on his face, the crushing look on his face, that he was staring death in the face at the beginning of the episode, ready to die, and now he actually wants to die. Because this person he's known his whole life, who's rightfully angry at him, is saying this really cruel thing to him, and he now finally feels like he deserves it. And that is crushing. Tom Hiddleston's performance there. I've barely talked about Tom Hiddleston. He, damn, sailing the ship right for sure in this episode. I've always thought he was great. I feel like Episode 1 showed his range of ability with what he can do with the character, and Episode 4 is just truly solid, good performance. All the over-the-top goofiness is gone in this episode. He is really crushed down to whatever the bare essence of who he is, which is, again, they did that in Thor, but now this is the superior Thor. I did enjoy the first Thor movie way back when. Was that 2011? But definitely it was one of those ones that, you feel like they kind of made it, but they kind of missed the mark a little bit, but did make an overall strong picture. Captain America, the First Avenger, was much better. But Thor was still good. I watched it again recently. It's still, I think, a very strong entry. And considering that they had to write that movie in 3 weeks, I read that they had to write that movie in 3 weeks to get it made. That's an incredible feat. Writing is challenging. It takes me a long time to write. I'm really slow at everything. I also really like to see the whole thing before I even write it all. And so it takes me a long time to write. And that's not a great process. It's a very bad process for getting anything done. But just to think of that, if I'm on one end of the spectrum of slow ass, get off your ass and write, to this other guy, a real professional screenwriter, having to write a whole movie in 3 weeks, that's nuts. So you're going to have things that feel a bit undercooked. So I appreciate that. I feel, again, episode 4 completely does what was promised. Thor 1 was supposed to feel like the perfect cinematic adaptation of the comic book for the modern age. And it's just, to me, I feel like if you were going to truly do a Thor movie, it would have to be done like Conan the Barbarian. If you wanted to do it right, you'd have to do it like Conan the Barbarian, the Arnold Schwarzenegger one. You'd have to get an Arnold Schwarzenegger-like guy to play that role if you really wanted to do it right. but also someone who had the acting chops to be truly Shakespearean, and you have to have that. But Marvel, trying to be relevant and trying to be current, made a more accessible Thor with Chris Hemsworth. And now, although we're still in that sort of accessible, family-friendly universe, I appreciate that we've really dug into the character so much, and he has just been having his face rubbed in. Like a dog, like a bad dog having his face rubbed in all the shit that he's left around the house. Where WandaVision had the mega meta conversation with Kat Dennings, where Kat Dennings watches WandaVision literally as a viewer, we've gone from the mega meta conversation to the character themselves having the meta conversation and asking themselves, where am I gonna go next and why? And the fact that it's Loki, the least trustworthy character, so slithery and untrustworthy that no one trusts him anyway, where is he gonna go? I think the fact that we're still on that question in episode 4 and he appears to be going the right way, but like Mobius, it's like, hey, we've seen every time we see you, you're conniving and you lie and you pretend to be sympathetic every single time. You know? So, is this going to be another ruse? Really, as the question remains, the episode's not great because it leaves the question. It's great because all the filmmaking makes the question worth asking. That I want to know, because damn, I cared about each person when they died, and I cared about each person when they were left alone. And even though I think 2 and 3 were a bit wonky, it did set up and build up to this really nicely. The payoff to all that setup was totally worth it for me. I wanted to do another shout out, back to nerd mode. Eric Martin is the writer. He wrote the TV movie The Other Mother, and he wrote and directed a couple shorts before that. Mr. Martin, I think you really did a good job with the script. I do feel like those scenes were blunt, but maybe you did too. Maybe everyone felt that way at some point, but you had to make the show the way you made it. You know, I'm not placing blame. Like I said, without my little suggestion, I felt good enough about this episode that I had to rush out and say something, and I've never had a gut reaction that I actually did after watching. That's the truth. I've always thought about it a lot and really tried to reason out what I wanted to say and then reacted. That's the actual truth. But I watched this episode today and I just really had to geek out a bit about it. And I really love the score. I just want to shout that out. We're in nerd mode, okay? Natalie Holt is the composer. She's composed for a lot of stuff I haven't seen, like Infidel, Cordelia, Rachel, Nightfall, Paddington, Great Expectations. Haven't watched any of it, but my nephew loves Paddington. I'm loving Loki. I think me and my nephew, he's 5 years old, but I think we're bonding. On a deep level here. He might be a nerd at heart. Oh yeah, he's a nerd. no, that's so stupid. It's fantastic score. I love how subtle it is, but it's actually very beautiful. Really, really beautiful, understated score. I think it really lands. They land that fish with the score. They land the fish with everything in this episode: performance, directing, the cast. But damn, I think the score really hits in the emotional scenes where it counts, and when it's not there, it is also a good choice. I mean, I think this was a perfectly scored episode. They didn't put too much music or try to overwhelm you. I think a lot of movies and shows do that, and you understand that that's an insecurity on the side of the filmmaker. They think they need to do that for the movie or show. Sometimes silence is better, and the best silence was the end of this episode and the start of this episode. It starts off, we're in Asgard. Lady Loki as a kid is playing by herself. She's all alone. It ends with Lady Loki having Loki in her life, and the same agent who took her as a kid kills Loki at the end, and both scenes are very silent. So that's a choice. Now, was that the director? Was that the writer? Was that the producer? who's to say? You know, this is a gut reaction, so I did not do the homework and I don't know those answers. But damn, I'm so happy that they made those choices very well. And like I said, the score really fits where it is. I think that opening scene, it's so beautiful and epic. All the emotion that we get as the themes play for each character, like when B-15 is getting her flashback and we just hear the score and we know from looking at her face that she's happy. We see the happiness on her face. That's how strong of an actress as she is, that we can just see her react and know. And also we know from the previous episode how the power works, so we don't need to see it here. So again, strong construction of the show overall. Once you know the rule, you don't have to repeat seeing the same visual over and over again. Like in a superhero movie, you don't see the person tear off their clothes every single time. They do it once or twice when it's dramatic, and then they don't do it again, because you know that they took off their clothes to become the superhero and wear the tights. So I appreciate that the show trusted you to understand what it meant when Lady Loki grabs her hand, and you just see her expression on her face of seeing her flashbacks, and Lady Loki herself being happy to provide them, which is also interesting because when we see Loki smile in the regular MCU movies, it's always a conniving, sick smile. And this is the first time we see Lady Loki smile, and it seems to be genuine and earnest. And she appears to be actually a genuine hero, and the TVA to her has been a villain her whole life. So there's a cross motivation, and it's interesting. Now we're into interesting territory, because now should she win? Is she actually right? Is Loki actually going to be a hero? Now the questions really are building. But all the filmmaking really solidly supports getting us there, because it's so well directed and paced and edited. The editing's fantastic, and the cast's so strong. Again, the fact that I can just feel B-15's feelings from just that one close-up, that's so powerful. That's really good stuff. So even though it's blockbuster, I think just really strong filmmaking. And again, I do feel like because the rest of this sells so well, we needed to see Owen Wilson cry. We needed to see him cry to complete how perfect this pretty much almost was, in my eyes. In my eyes, I think this was like 99.9%, but that 1% actually accounts for a lot and would have really been great. But still, this episode rocks. You know, fantastic filmmaking. I love character examination stuff. Memento, definitely one of my favorite movies ever by Christopher Nolan. All character examination and character examining himself. And in this case, the show is literally the character examining himself, but as a woman, and examining himself, but as a woman. But anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you again next week. And yeah, have a wonderful evening, night, day, whatever time it is, and I'll see you on the next autoplay. Aloha, yo.